Welcome to Money and Market, a program that explains the economy in plain language for everyone to understand. And of course, it is a program that shows you how the economy affects you, everything around you, especially your pocket. All right, today we'll be looking at a very critical topic, and it is something that affects you and I as well, like we said in our previous episode. But today, we'll be looking at the reason why prices keep rising and is not commensurate with what you earn. In other words, why is it that your money cannot buy you exactly what it used to buy? There's a reason why that happens. Just one word in economic terms: inflation. Now, many of you must have heard a lot about the word inflation. Today we'll excuse me, today we'll break down things really nicely and simplified in order for even the market woman and of course those in the street to understand what inflation is all about. Now, simply put, like I said, we'll not be going into those economic jargons, but simply put, inflation means prices rising over time. The way the price rises over time, the general, rise in price is what inflation is all about. So when inflation, for instance, goes up, the value of money goes down. When inflation, I want you to take note of this because as we go deeper into the discussion today, you will get to understand why I said this line now, that when inflation goes up, the value of your money goes down. Let's take a critical example. If 10,000 naira bought, a full bag of food items like last year or let's say a couple of years ago, but today that same amount of money, which is 10,000 naira, now buys half of that bag of food items, then what just happened is inflation. All right? What just happened is inflation. So, what Nigerians experience every day, the increase, especially when you see them at uh, fuel stations, in terms of transport hike, in terms of rentage that is up, and yes, in terms of what we see in the market every day, this is exactly what we refer to as inflation. When you see the hike in foodstuff in the market, at fuel stations, in the transport industry, those of you who travel a lot, you get to understand what I'm saying. And of course, for those of you who pay rent, um, when your rent is due, your landlord or the owner of the property where you reside or where you do your business will come and say there's a rise in an increase in your rentage. All this is what inflation is all about. Now, let's look at something on the screen for us to define what inflation is all about, for you to grasp what inflation is all about. Now, like I said, inflation is the rising uh, cost of items in prices as against your money in your pocket. So inflation equals to rising prices, right? So invariably, what money buys less over time. Um, you can see how the naira or the note is shrinking in size. I mean, if we have that a clip on the screen. All right. So now all of these will come in courtesy of our sources, so it's not something that we just talk about. So inflation is why food prices rise. It is the reason why we have transport costs going up. Inflation is the reason why your salary feels, like like it's very small, even when the number has not changed. And so the harsh reality about this is that inflation affects low income earners. Those are the people or the strata of the society that inflation hits the hardest. Because while prices rise, income, your income oftentimes stay the same. All right, that's why I said the price of goods going up is not commensurate with your salary. Let's look at another graphics on our screen right now. The before and now in everyday prices. Now we can see that a cup of rice is sold for 100 naira before now. Yeah, and of course transport used to be like 200 naira, and then bread, a certain size of bread was sold for 300 naira. Now this was before, and now that same cup of rice is now being sold for about 250 naira and above, and the transport fare in that same distance is now being charged for 500 naira or more, and then um, the same quality or size of bread that was sold for about 300 naira about last year or 2 years ago is now being sold for 800 naira or more. So you can see that it is same money in your hand, same money in your hand, but now that same money is buying fewer items compared to before. Now, like I said, all of these are coming as a result of the CPI reports courtesy of the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics. So inflation is not just an economic term. It is something that affects you and I. It is a daily reality. So, but what causes inflation? What really is the reason for inflation to even happen in the first place? Why does it somehow refuse to go away? Because we've seen over time that inflation remains where, I mean, it keeps happening. It doesn't go away, even when all the apparatus, all the tools are put in place to ensure that inflation goes off. It still exist. Even when we try to fight, when the players of the economy and of course the regulators of the economy try to reduce drastically the percentage of inflation as it affects the economy, we still see inflation around. So why does it refuse to go away? We will look into all of that, the causes of inflation in Nigeria. But just to let you know once again that inflation is not just one big term. It's not just something for the economists or the graduates of economics or those who are in the high strata of the society. It is for you and I. It concerns you and I because it is something that relates to prices and how it happens in relation to what we earn or what is in our pockets. So in our previous episodes in Money and Market, we've been talking about inflation on the lighter side, and we kept saying something that it is what puts hole in your pocket. Inflation is what makes your salary or your income disappear into the thin air, and you keep asking the question, what just happened to the money or the income in my pocket? And inflation, like I said, makes us to understand that what we use, I mean, what the value of the currency or your money in your pocket used to buy some time ago is not the same amount or quality of things that it bought back then that it will now buy. So that's what inflation is all about. So when you hear people say, for instance, I had 10,000 naira in the past, let's say probably 2010, and I was able to buy a large quantity of foodstuff in the house. Your maybe your basket of beans, a basket of rice, onions, some foodstuff. You could take 10,000 to the market, let's say by 2010, and you come home with a lot of food items. But now that 10,000 naira could hardly buy you some form of meat or some quantity of meat that you want to use in preparation of your local dishes. Not to mention um, other food stuff that you want to buy to make up your food. So that's what inflation is all about. Like I said, we'll not be going with the terms that is related to um, inflation, so that the common man out there in the street, the those who did not, attain higher institutions will be able to understand what inflation is all about. And that's what this program does. We break things nicely for everyone to understand. So once again, the reason your income shrinks or looks like it's small or getting smaller by the day is because of inflation. Inflation. The reason why prices keep rising up and your income looks as if it's going down, even when your income stays the same. Now, one harsh reality about inflation is that over time, your income, for example, those who are salaried earners, those salaried earners would always have their income a kind of stable for a number of years. All right. So, and this does not, I mean, when it comes to salary, you don't just have promotion or increase in your salary every year as it is. So, but for prices of goods and by extension services, they keep increasing. They keep increasing as a result of so many factors, which, if time permits us today, we'll look into all of that. So, it is like a must for inflation to happen. And when it happens, um, when the prices of goods keep rising, and your money stays in one place over time, then you say that inflation has hit rock bottom. All right, so that's what inflation is all about, and we gave instances of what money could buy some years back, and what that same amount of money cannot buy right now. All right, it's a very important topic for you and I, for you and I to understand what this is about, because many persons have heard inflation, inflation, inflation. So now you're getting a better understanding of what inflation is all about. All right, pretty soon, just a couple of minutes from now, we'll go on a quick commercial. And when we return, we'll be looking at why inflation in Nigeria. Why and what are the reasons why we have inflation going on in Nigeria? We'll tell you more about that when we return.
At DSAG Engineering and Services, we anticipate, manage, and deliver. Since 2000, we have been a leading EPC company, ensuring customer satisfaction through quality service and timely delivery. With integrity, proficiency, and innovation at our core, we provide world-class solutions tailored to your needs. From engineering designs and construction to procurement, manpower outsourcing, and maritime supplies, DSAG delivers excellence. Partner with us today. Visit www.dsag.net or call +23 4807 254 8724. DSAG Engineering and Services, anticipate, manage, deliver. At DSAG Engineering and Services, we anticipate, manage, and deliver. Since 2000, we have been a leading EPC company, ensuring customer satisfaction through quality service and timely delivery. With integrity, proficiency, and innovation at our core, we provide world-class solutions tailored to your needs. From engineering designs and construction to procurement, manpower outsourcing, and maritime supplies, DSAG delivers excellence. Partner with us today. Visit www.dsag.net or call +23 4807 254 8724. DSAG Engineering and Services, anticipate, manage, deliver.
All right, welcome back from that break. And before we went on that break, we said we're going to be looking at the causes of inflation in Nigeria. Now, um, we have been talking, I mean, we're trying to get to the meaning of inflation, what inflation means, and I hope we've been able to deal with that. But let's go into the in quote flesh of this particular topic now, and this will give you some insight, better insight about what inflation is all about. So, like anything that happens in life, they just don't happen accidentally. There are reasons why things happen. So in Nigeria, there are basically four major reasons or very specific reasons why inflation comes to the fore. One of them is too much circulation of money in, and of course, too very few goods being purchased by this too much money in circulation. Yes, too much money chasing too few goods, simply put. So when money is in circulation, but goods are not increasing, definitely prices will increase. Now, that's some form of economic laws. We don't want to go into that so that everybody will understand, but that's one thing when it comes to demand and supply, the laws of demand and supply. So again, when money is so much in circulation and few goods are available for that money to buy, then definitely prices will go up. Now, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria statistics released recently, currency circulation and demand deposits rose from 122.94 trillion naira. That was as at November 2025. It rose to 124.4 trillion naira as at the end of December 2025. So you can see that there was a sort of increase, about 2.90 trillion naira increase in the circulation of money and demand deposits. Let's look at the graphics we have before us, trying to explain the too much money and too few goods, because you can see that many people are chasing few food items. Okay, so the let's should I go on with the second cause now, the second reason? But definitely, for you to understand something, is that where we have so much money in the economy, cash liquid as it's called, like I said, I don't want to go into all those terminologies, but when we have so much cash in circulation and demand deposits, I don't want to go there, but for you to grasp what I'm trying to say, when you have so much circulation, so much money in circulation, and it becomes few goods with us, available in the market, then the sellers will want to increase the prices of such goods. All right, let's go to the second reason. Like I said, there are four in number. The second reason is high cost of production. High cost of production. Now, let's look at it. When fuel prices increase, when electricity is unstable, when transport costs increase, definitely you as a business owner would not want to, you know, share or take the burden of these things I just mentioned. I will explain better. But you definitely would now add these factors in your business. You now add them to what you are producing, to the price of what you are producing. So because no businesses or no business wants to sell at a loss. So these burdens will now be passed on because um, fuel, electricity, transport, these are part of your production. These are parts of your production. And so the cost of having these available for your production, you want to add them to the price of what you are producing. Okay, so get that understanding. And no businesses will now say, okay, because there's hike in fuel, there's electricity tariff that is so high most times, and of course electricity is even unstable, but then the electricity tariff is high because it's unstable. You buy fuel to run your generating sets, and then transport costs increase. You now say you want to bear the burden as a businessman. You will not make profit. And that's why I said no business wants to run at a loss. So you see on the screen, fuel goes up, electricity goes up, it's not even available in the first place, transport fare goes up, definitely the prices of that particular product will go up. All right, let's look at another reason why there is inflation in Nigeria. This one is on exchange rate. On exchange rate, that's a very, very major factor when it comes to inflation. Now, Nigeria imports a lot, food, fuel, machines, raw materials. We import a lot, and all of these, like in one of the episodes, I said, why fuel? Why do we even import fuel? Well, because we do not have enough refineries to refine um, crude oil to now give us the various products that would come out of the crude oil when it's refined. So Nigeria imports a lot of food, no doubt about that. One very good example of food item that Nigeria imports a lot is rice. There's fuel, there's machines, because we do not produce machineries here in Nigeria. I mean, those major machineries we do not. And so we'll have to import a whole lot of them. And then raw materials for uh, to do our businesses, we also import this. So we talked about the naira, the currency recently. So when the naira weakens, and it happens a lot during inflation, when the naira weakens, your imports, we said this before, your imports become expensive, okay, and inflation rises. So your weak naira will not exchange for the dollars which you use in your business for the importation of your goods, and as a result, those prices of imports will now cost more. I mean, those imports will now be very expensive. They will now cost more, and then that's when inflation arises as well. So inflation will not be at the state or the level where it was. It will now increase. So the data from the CBN shows recently that the naira recorded marginal losses recently, despite a softer dollar globally. I mean, the dollar was, became soft in the market terms recently. But even at that, recently, the CBN made us to understand that the naira got weakened, and it closed at the third week of January at 1,421 naira 90 kobo. That was the exchange rate for the dollar. So let's look at the then and now when it comes to some items, when it relates to exchange rates. Now, you look at before now, the naira was stronger in the exchange for the dollar, and then we had lower import costs as a result, because when you now trade your business, when you now do your business, it now looks like you are buying on a cheap. But right now, like I just said recently, the CBN data that was released not quite long showed that the naira, was weakened, and so the exchange rate was really, really not favorable for the Nigerian market, and as a result, we have higher import costs. So whatever you are importing, definitely the cost went up. And then the last but not the least, the factor or reason why we have inflation in Nigeria is supply disruption. Now, there are different shocks when it comes to the supply chain in Nigeria. We have insecurity, we have flooding, we have bad roads, and of course, global crisis economically reduce supply. And when goods are scarce, because when there's supply disruption, definitely there's scarcity of that particular goods. And so when these goods are scarce, prices definitely go up. That is the law of demand and supply. Okay, so when goods are scarce, definitely prices will shoot up. This is just simple economics. I don't know if you're getting what we have been talking about. Again, just for you to understand, four factors. You know, we just picked these ones. There are other factors, but we just picked these few factors for you to understand what inflation is all about. The first factor why there's inflation in Nigeria, like we talked about, is when we have too much money chasing very few goods, very few goods. And of course, the other factor was the high cost of production. Definitely, as a business owner, you will not want to accumulate all those costs and then let the consumer enjoy, um, almost like a freebie and you running at a loss. Because, like I said, no business owner will want to go into business to make losses, rather to make profit. And the other reason we gave, or the factor that we gave, was on the exchange rate. Now, this exchange rate has been very, very volatile, has been very, very unstable. And we gave you just an instance where the CBN recently showed us that the Naira, marginally weakened recently. And when it comes to foreign exchange, it's not really good for business owners who do importation and of course exportation. And we gave instances of how these things work when we have low or weak naira, as it were, because it will affect your import. Of course, when you want to bring in inputs from abroad. And the last one we just talked about was the supply disruption. I mean, where we have shocks in the supply of goods. Take an example from some of the factors, sub factors I brought out under supply disruption. One of them was insecurity. We look at what's going on in Nigeria as it is right now. The volatile areas, in those particular areas in Nigeria, the northeast, some part of the north region, and of course, you say that when these things happen, farmers who are in the agricultural sector hardly go to the farms, and when that happens, supply, there'll be scarcity of agricultural produce, and then natural disaster in the form of flooding. When flood happens, we saw it not quite long. I think we saw some last year. It also affects supply as well. All right, so I hope you're getting the drift right now, what inflation is all about. When we come back, because we'll go for a short break right now, we'll look at how inflation affects you, your job, and your business. Stay with us.
At DSAG Engineering and Services, we anticipate, manage, and deliver. Since 2000, we have been a leading EPC company, ensuring customer satisfaction through quality service and timely delivery. With integrity, proficiency, and innovation at our core, we provide world-class solutions tailored to your needs. From engineering designs and construction procurement, manpower outsourcing, and maritime supplies, DSAG delivers excellence. Partner with us today. Visit www.dsag.net or call +23 4807 254 8724. DSAG Engineering and Services, anticipate, manage, deliver.
Well, welcome back, and so super excited to know that you are still with us. And just a reminder that we are looking at inflation. What is this word inflation? Okay, so before we went on that breather, we said we we're going to be looking at how inflation affects you and I, our job, and of course, those of us who are in business. Well, I just mentioned different aspects right now because inflation truly hits different people in different ways. But one group that feels it most, I said it, I think when we just started, the one group that inflation hits the most is the ordinary Nigerians. The ordinary Nigerians. If you earn a fixed salary, for those who are workers, who earn fixed salary, inflation is your silent enemy. This is one line that we kept, hammering on, kept talking about. It is your silent enemy, inflation, especially when you are a fixed earner, when your salary is fixed. Okay, so but let's look now what we have on the screen right now. That will be displayed on your screen. Who suffers most from inflation? I just said about fixed salaries earners. Yeah, so salary earners are one of those who are most affected by inflation. Yes, because salary earners, over time, their salaries remain the same for a pretty long time before you get to talk about promotion, you get to talk about increase in your salary. So you as a salary earner, you are one of those mostly affected by inflation. You know why? Because as your salary remains in one place for a pretty long time, let's say in your space of operation, you have every 4 years before salaries are reviewed, or your salaries get to increase. In that 4 years, inflation must have hit you several times. Okay, the inflation must have risen, dropped, risen, dropped, risen, because that's how it is, very unstable. And yes, that's why I said you as a salary earner, you are one of those who are mostly hit, because as it increases, as inflation happens to you, your salary remains intact for the next 4 years. But then what that salary was buying before now could not buy again before your next salary review. All right. Still on that particular slide, you could see that market traders are another, uh, you know, set of people that inflation hits the hardest, um, in the sense that they go into the market space, they get their goods from their major suppliers, get to the market, and then sells. But then, for those who are supposed to come do business with them, they just cannot come do business with them because, I mean, the volume of what they used to buy, it's not like they cannot do business with them, but the volume of what they used to buy will not be the same volume that they used to buy. Okay, right now they cannot buy the same volume that they were buying before. Talking about the salary earners, especially because those are the people that want to go to the local market and to meet market traders. Same goes for small businesses. They are also one of the hardest when it comes to inflation. They are one of the modest, one of the set of persons that inflation hits the hardest. And then pensioners. I mean, pensioners is just like into salary earners. In fact, theirs is even almost worse because there's no increase over time of their pension. Okay, so they just live by uh, how inflation sucks a lot of money from their pockets. All right, so you can see the worker trader, SMEs, and of course retiree. The retirees are under the pensioners that I just talked about. So if you earn a fixed salary, inflation quietly, that's what I've been saying, inflation quietly reduces your standard of living. It reduces your standard of living, you know because your salary is fixed. Like I gave the instance of maybe you as a worker in your workspace, your salary is reviewed every 4 years, and definitely your standard of living would definitely drop, because your income stays the same. um, but food costs more, yeah, more, and transport costs more, because you're still looking at, probably you're on a salary of about 100K, 100,000 naira a month, and over the next 4 years, that's how the salary would be. But there's definitely transport fare will increase, and it's still on that salary. Food items will definitely increase, that will still be on that salary. And of course, your rent will definitely be increased by the property owner or your landlord, as it were. And of course, you cannot save. You cannot save. That's what now happens to you. Savings just disappears, suffers a lot. So money kept in cash loses uh, value, every day when inflation is high. All right. So when inflation, goes up, definitely the money in your hand is almost like is valueless. You know, the money that you keep in your possession is almost like valueless because of inflation. All right, let's also, for a look at small businesses now, we're looking at the home front. All right, let's look at small businesses, what inflation does to small businesses. Um, they are the next in line anyway for those who are most affected after those guys I talked about, the salary earners, the market traders, the small businesses, and of course pensioners. So for small businesses, inflation means unstable prices. That's what inflation brings to the fore for small businesses. The prices would never remain the same. It will always be going up and down, up and down. The down I'm even referring to is not like it's coming to the original price of how it used to be. For instance, some years ago, just a few years ago, I think before um, President Bola Tinubu became president, we know how much a bag of rice was. Okay, so when he came overboard, the price of rice went shot up, and for some time, I think sometime last year, the price of the bag of rice dropped. Okay, now when I say dropped, when you compare to what the amount it dropped to, and that same the same bag of rice, how much it was before he became president, you'll see that it's not really a drop. Okay, let's assume a bag of rice then before he became president was let's say 30,000 naira, and when he became president, um, it's all assumption now. I don't want to go to correct figures. I want you to understand where I'm coming from. So before he became president, let's assume it was 30,000 naira to a bag of rice. And then when he became president, a few months later, bag of rice was like 100K, 100,000 naira. All right. Now, few years later, let's say about 2 years later, after he became president, the bag of rice now went to 70,000 naira. So that's the cheapest in his administration. From 100,000 when he became president, for instance, and then 2 years later he became 70,000. So you now say there's a price reduction, or the price of that particular goods has dropped. When you compare the price, 100,000 and 70,000, it's 30,000 naira drop. But now compare this 30,000 naira drop, the 70,000 naira that it is, let's say at the present, and compared to when he became president, when it was 30,000 naira, would you say that there is a price drop? All right, you get where I'm coming from. So unstable prices for small businesses, and then reduced profit, because where there is instability with pricing of goods, definitely your profit would not be on the rise, like constantly, on the rise, but instead it will go like up today, tomorrow it will reduce, to, just like that, up and down. So it's even unstable, your profit. But definitely, when you want to look at when you were doing business a couple of years ago and now, you say that your profit has reduced. All right. And in this same space for small businesses, you could see that customers are buying less. Like I said, your salary is not increasing, it's still there, and the prices of goods are increasing. So what you have to do is, like they used to say, cut your cloth according to what? Okay, you get it. So that's the harsh reality of how money works. I mean, inflation works for small businesses. All right. So let's look at the graphics before us again, and you will get to understand the before and now on business reality. Okay. Um, you see that before, on the left, you say is that we had stable costs, okay, and predictable profit. Now this for businesses. We had stable cost or stable prices for the goods that they want to sell to the customers or to the consumers, and then they had predictable profit. They could predict that, okay, at the end of the first quarter of the year, my profit margin will be at so percent. It was very predictable. But now look at it: rising costs of doing business. Before, they had stable cost of doing business, and then even when they pass the bulk, the burden to the pricing of the goods, they still make some, number of good profits. But right now, the rising costs of materials to do the business is really, really not, on the positives for them. And so they want to push such to the consumer. But even when they push such to the consumers, their, margins, profit margins shrink, because not everybody will be able to, just like what we said, customers are buying less. All right. So that's exactly what also affects them. It will now translate into their profit being, getting shrinked and shrinking as it is. So the margins are always shrinking for them, very, very small compared to when it used to be. So this is why inflation to all of us, inflation is very dangerous. It is quietly pushing people into poverty without making noise. That's what inflation does, quietly. Because you will now be asking yourself, "Ah, what did this money that I just gathered now, what did it actually do for me?" Quietly, without making noise, inflation will make you be staring at the face of poverty. But inflation can be controlled, really? Can it be controlled? Because we've been looking at the reasons why we have inflation and what inflation is all about. So if this is, because I know while I was talking, if you recall very well, when I said inflation could go up and come down, the percentage of how it affects could go up and come down. So I mean, if it's also volatile, if it's also moving up and down, if it's also unstable, can it be controlled? This is what we'll look at as we round things up in uh, the next segment after this commercial break. Stay with us.
At DSAG Engineering and Services, we anticipate, manage, and deliver. Since 2000, we have been a leading EPC company, ensuring customer satisfaction through quality service and timely delivery. With integrity, proficiency, and innovation at our core, we provide world-class solutions tailored to your needs. From engineering designs and construction to procurement, manpower outsourcing, and maritime supplies, DSAG delivers excellence. Partner with us today. Visit www.dsag.net or call +23 4807 254 8724. DSAG Engineering and Services, anticipate, manage, deliver.
All right, welcome back from that break. And before we went on the break, we asked the question, can inflation be controlled? Can inflation be controlled? We will answer that question very soon. And we'll also look at how inflation, how Nigerians, you and I, can cope in the face of inflation. So let's ask ourselves the first question, can inflation be controlled? Can inflation be controlled? Okay, so like I said, we have regulators of the economy. Every government, every country has regulators, and Nigeria is not exempted in this particular uh, matter as well. For the economy, those who really control the economy, or the regulators, when it comes to finances or financial matters, they are the governments and uh, most most times, and most especially the apex bank. In this sense, in Nigeria, it is the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, these two players, the government and the CBN, they do not ignore inflation. We have to be aware of this. They do all they can to ensure that inflation is controlled, and they fight inflation using several tools. There are several, but we'll look at just two of them. One of them is interest rate, and the other is boosting local production. Let's start with the interest rate. The first is the interest rate. Now, the understanding, or the what's the word? I really want to break this down really nicely. This simplified, or the simple method, to help control inflation. You cannot remove inflation. That's one thing for sure. Because if you do your studies, if you go on a research on other economies, in other parts of the world, you will definitely be hearing inflation is reduced to 1 point something percent, or 2%, or 12%, whatever it is. So it is the understanding that inflation cannot go away. Inflation cannot go away. Inflation will always be part and parcel of us. but it can be controlled. Yes, it can. And so one of the ways of controlling inflation right here in Nigeria is via higher interest rates. Now, with higher interest rates, this brings about a reduction in spending, and of course, it slows down price increases. That's what this higher interest rate does. The interest rate. So we go on a higher interest rate when there's a higher interest rate. It brings this um, spending capability to a certain level, reduced to a certain level, and then it also slows down, price increases. That's the understanding. Um, that's the understanding. Let me just leave it at that. That's what they believe. These players. That's what they believe can help control, to a greater extent, the effect or the influence of inflation. All right, let's look at what we have on the screen, how inflation is controlled. Like I said, interest rates. Now, with the interest rates, that brings about the money supply control. I talked about what CBN released recently, the volume of money in circulation. We have at the end of December 2025, uh, at the 2.90 trillion naira increase from what we had the previous month, which was November 2025. So you can see that the volume of money in circulation was really, really high. So one way that the government and the regulators of the economy would help is by um, ensuring that money supply is controlled. And that's what they are trying to do. Do most of your businesses cashless. Let's go cashless. Let's do businesses online instead of carrying much cash in our hands. All right. Another thing that you're seeing on your screen about these graphics is the exchange rate stability. Now, the government has to do a lot when it comes to the exchange rate. The exchange rate. We've got to ensure that the local naira appreciates and doesn't get weakened too often. And there's been, to a large extent, some form of stability when it comes to what the naira buys the dollars. I mean, exchanges for the dollar. Recently I think there's been a little form of stability, not like what it used to. I think in the early part of 2025. And then, of course, the other one is local production, which we will look as the second reason that the government can do to control inflation. Boosting local production. Now, that's another factor or other tool that the federal government, all the regulators of the finance of the economy can use to control inflation. Now, when we produce more locally, we depend less on imports, and then this brings about price stability. Price stability. Okay, but like we saw over the former slide, where we talked about exchange, money supply control, and then it brings about exchange rate stability. All right. So, but with these tools that I just mentioned, just two of them, one of them, like I said, the interest rates, and then the other is boosting local production. Like I said, there are various tools that the federal government or the CBN can use. We don't want to go deep into all of that. I just want you to get the understanding of how that it can be controlled, yes, to the barest minimum if we can, if these things are really taken into serious consideration. But these solutions, these two tools that I just talked about, they are not really that easy because definitely it will take time for us to start seeing the effect of these solutions that I just preferred. So the other Nigerians cope when it comes to inflation, coping with inflation? All right, let's see the slide now for us to get an understanding of how Nigerians cope when it comes to inflation. First off, you can see budget strictly, we've got to, our budget will have to be planned in a way, brought up in a way that it will help reduce the cost of inflation, cost of living on Nigerians, and then also try as much as we can, the regulators now, we can to reduce inflation in the economy. And then another thing that you're seeing on the screen there is reduce waste. Reduce waste. Mm. This is very, very important because when we do have surplus, some time ago I talked about how it is that you get surplus because of your pricing. People will turn away from such pricing, and then you have a lot of waste. So we have to reduce waste. That's one way of trying to cope with inflation. Yeah. So let me come back to that budget strictly. For you as a person, as a Nigerian, you have to um, stop spending impulsively. There are people, that anything that just comes to the mind, as long as there's money in their pocket, they will just spend instantly. That's called impulse spending. So impulse spending, you kill impulse spending when you budget strictly. So that will also reduce waste. Okay, I just wanted to link that budget strictly to reducing waste. So it will reduce wastage. So you will not be spending money recklessly. Let me put it that way. And then multiple income streams. We've hammered on this over and over. In fact, right from episode 1 of Money and Market, we've been talking about multiple income streams. It's very, very important because, especially for you, the salaried earner, you cannot depend on your salary alone in relation to inflation. Okay, so if you say you want to do that, that means you won't be buying or be purchasing enough items for yourself and your family. All right, so you want to have multiple income streams in order for you to, in quote, meet up, with your cost of living or your standard of living. All right, so multiple income streams would help you cope with inflation. Another is to invest wisely. Now, don't just jump, we talked about this before, don't just jump into every business ideas that come your way. It could come in the form of Ponzi scheme, because they still call it business idea. It will come in the form of a pyramid business, whatever model. So you've got to look at those things very, very critically before you say you are jumping into spending your money on investment. All right, so inflation is not just an economic statistics, okay? It is the reason your money feels weaker. So get the understanding of what inflation is. Inflation is not just for the scholars. It is not just for the big corporations or for government. It concerns you and I, even you, the market woman, the trader in the market, even you, the vulcanizer, even you, the artisan, whoever you are. Inflation concerns you. It is the reason your money feels weak. And when you say, my money cannot buy me what I used to, it is inflation that is at play. So understanding what inflation is the first step to surviving the inflation. Okay? Now, understand one thing. Inflation is like your enemy. It puts hole in your pocket. Okay? So get that understanding. I hope we've learned a great deal of what inflation is all about. Like I said, can inflation be controlled? Yes, you have seen how it can be controlled. I just brought out 2 key tools on how it can be controlled by the government or the regulators of the economy, one through interest rates and the other through boosting local production when we do not depend solely on foreign production as it were. Okay, so that is all we have for Money and Market today on the topic inflation. I hope we have been able to explain what inflation is all about. By the way, Money and Market is the program where we explain the economy in a way everyone can understand. And I hope we have delivered that to you right now. And of course, you now have a better understanding of what inflation means and how it works. And I want to say thank you so much for staying with us, for watching. And before I say I'll see you next week or next time when we bring you another interesting and educative episode of the program, always do know that TVM, the app, is available on, on Apple Store and of course on Google Play, Play Store. You can download the app, and of course you can follow us via that app. You can also watch us on the go via different channels that you're seeing on your screen right now, on YouTube, Facebook, and what have you. And of course, there's a particular number on your screen right now where you can also reach us via text, call, or even via WhatsApp message. We'll do. We're so glad to hear from you. And yes, I want to say thank you once again for watching. Until then, always remember that in money matters, impatience leads to regret. Wait until the numbers make a lot of sense to you. Wait until the timing is right. Goodbye for now.